Every night, Liam would hear it. At first, he thought it was just the house settling. The creak of the old wooden floorboards, the wind rattling the windows, it was always something he could explain away. But this sound was different. It started softly at first, a faint scratching sound coming from Emily's room across the hall. At first, Liam assumed she was tossing and turning, maybe having one of her usual bad dreams, but the noise grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't a random noise. It wasn't just a dream. It was as if something, or someone, was moving in the shadows of her room. Liam had always considered himself the protector. He was the older brother, the one who kept things safe. But tonight, something felt off. He was lying in bed, trying to sleep, but the noise wouldn't stop. He turned to look at the clock on his nightstand. It was 2:43 a.m. The house was silent, except for that strange, scratching sound. Sighing, Liam pulled himself out of bed, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling in his chest. He made his way across the dark hallway to Emily's room, every creak of the floor making his heart beat faster. As he reached her door, he paused, listening. The sound had stopped. But when Liam opened the door, he was hit by the cold, still air of her room. Emily was lying in bed, her face pale, her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Liam whispered softly, stepping into her room. "You okay?" Emily didn't respond right away. Her lips trembled, and she shifted in bed, wrapping her small arms around herself as if trying to protect herself from something. Liam felt his stomach twist in worry. "I heard it again," Emily whispered, her voice shaky. "The shadow's back." Liam frowned, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean, the shadow?" he asked, kneeling beside her bed. He had heard Emily mention the shadow before, but he had always dismissed it as just a figment of her imagination, a product of her nightmares. Emily's eyes darted nervously to the corner of the room. Liam followed her gaze, but there was nothing there, just the dark, quiet corner where the shadows gathered in the stillness of the night. "It was in the corner," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw it moving, like it was waiting for me." Liam swallowed hard. He didn't want to believe her, but there was something in her eyes, something in her voice that made him think this was more than just a childish fear. He glanced around the room, searching for any sign of danger. The air felt heavy, as if something was waiting. Something that didn't belong. "Hey, it's okay," Liam said, trying to reassure her. "There's nothing here. It's just your imagination." But deep down, he wasn't sure. The scratching sound, the fear in Emily's eyes, it didn't feel like a simple nightmare. He had always heard people talk about strange things happening in old houses, but he never thought it would happen to him. Emily closed her eyes tightly and hugged her knees to her chest. "I don't want it to come back," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It always comes back when I'm alone. It watches me." Liam sat beside her, his mind racing. He tried to comfort her, but part of him was filled with dread. He wasn't sure what was going on, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized he couldn't just brush it off anymore. There was something wrong. Something in this house, something connected to Emily's fear. "I'll stay here with you," Liam said, his voice firm. He wasn't going to let his little sister face this alone. He sat beside her bed, waiting. The silence was deafening now, broken only by the sound of their breathing. For a while, there was nothing but stillness. The air around them was cold, almost too cold for a summer night. Emily eventually closed her eyes, her breathing slow and steady, but Liam stayed awake, staring into the darkness, wondering if he was hearing things. Could he be imagining it? Was it just his mind playing tricks on him? Then, suddenly, the sound returned. It was faint at first, just a light scratching, like something was gently tapping on the wall. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Emily, her face still calm, as if she hadn't heard it. But she had heard it before, and she would hear it again. It was no longer a nightmare. It was something real, something that had a hold on her. Liam stood up slowly, his legs shaky. The sound grew louder now, coming from the same corner of the room where Emily had said the shadow was. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. Emily wasn't imagining it. Something, or someone, was in this house, and it wasn't leaving. He rushed to the door, his hands trembling as he flicked on the light switch. But when the light came on, there was nothing there. The corner of the room was empty. No shadow, no presence, just the same old room. Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, but in the back of his mind, he knew something wasn't right. The sound, the shadow, Emily's fear, it all pointed to something that couldn't be ignored. He turned back to Emily, who was now sitting up in bed, her eyes wide with terror. "Liam, it's back," she whispered, barely able to speak. "It's in the room. I can feel it." Liam felt his heart race. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew he had to protect his sister. And whatever was in this house, whatever was haunting Emily, it was about to become the center of everything. The noise grew louder again, a soft scratching sound that seemed to come from nowhere. Liam didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear. He couldn't let his sister face this alone. He had to find out the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Hook. What was that scratching sound? Was it just a trick of the mind, or was something real and dangerous lurking in the dark corners of their home? Liam was about to find out, and the truth was far scarier than he ever imagined. Liam couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his chest as he sat beside Emily's bed. He had always thought of himself as the protector, the one who kept things safe when the world seemed scary. But tonight, fear gripped him like never before. He had seen his sister terrified, and he didn't know how to help her. He didn't know what they were dealing with. The scratching sound came again, just a faint, soft tap against the walls, almost as if it was teasing them. Liam's eyes darted to the corner of the room, the place Emily had pointed to before. He swallowed hard, fighting the urge to run out of the room. But he couldn't leave his sister alone, not when something so strange was happening. Emily was shaking now, her small hands clenched tightly around the covers. She was staring at the corner of the room, her eyes wide with dread, like she could see something that Liam couldn't. Her voice trembled as she spoke, barely above a whisper. "It's here. I can feel it watching me." Liam felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just the cold night air. It was something darker, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He didn't know what it was, but Emily's fear felt real, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. "Emily, listen to me," Liam said softly, trying to calm her down. "There's nothing in here. It's just your imagination, okay? You've had nightmares before. This is just another one. I'm here with you. Nothing's going to hurt you." Emily's eyes darted to him, but her fear didn't fade. "No, Liam. It's not a nightmare. It's real. I've seen it." Liam's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't know what to say. He wanted to believe his sister, but part of him still clung to the idea that it was all just her imagination running wild. It had to be right. But then, as if on cue, the scratching sound returned. This time, it was louder, more distinct, like something was dragging itself along the floor. Liam's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't deny it anymore. Something was in the room. Something that shouldn't be there. "Emily, stay here," Liam said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm going to check the house. I'll make sure everything's okay." Before she could respond, he stood up and walked toward the door, his heart racing. He didn't know what he was hoping to find, but he had to do something. He couldn't sit there and do nothing. Not when his sister was terrified. Not when he didn't understand what was happening. Liam opened the door slowly, stepping into the dark hallway. The house was eerily silent now. The air felt heavy, as if something was pressing down on him. Every little sound. The creak of the floorboards beneath his feet, the flutter of the curtains in the hallway, seemed to echo in the silence. He glanced over his shoulder toward Emily's room, but the door was still open. She was alone. Taking a deep breath, Liam made his way downstairs, trying to ignore the tight feeling in his chest. He couldn't shake the image of Emily's terrified face. Whatever was in that room, whatever was tormenting her, it wasn't normal. It wasn't just a nightmare. But what was it? As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he stood there for a moment, listening. The house felt still. Too still. He couldn't hear anything. No scratching, no rustling. Maybe it had been a mistake to come down. Maybe he was just overreacting, thinking too much about things. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. He could feel the weight of something dark pressing against him. Liam turned to walk back upstairs, but just as he reached the bottom of the stairs, a loud crash echoed through the house. He froze, his heart skipping a beat. The sound had come from upstairs, Emily's room. Without thinking, he rushed back up the stairs, his pulse pounding in his ears. He burst into Emily's room, his mind racing with fear. But when he reached the doorway, he stopped dead in his tracks. Emily was standing in the middle of the room, her eyes wide with terror. She was staring at something that wasn't there, her body frozen in place, as if she were locked in place by some invisible force. "Emily!" Liam shouted, rushing over to her. "What happened? What's going on?" Emily didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the corner of the room, her face pale as if she had seen a ghost. Liam followed her gaze, but there was nothing there. Just shadows, just the corner of the room, empty and still. "I saw it," Emily whispered, her voice shaking. "It was there, in the corner. I saw its eyes." Liam's heart raced. "What did you see, Em? What was it?" Emily slowly turned her head to look at him, her face filled with fear. "It wasn't human," she said, barely able to speak. "It was something else, something not from here." Liam's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what to say. Emily's words were making his mind spin. Could this be real? Could there really be something in their house, something that wasn't human? The scratching sound came again. This time, it was louder than before, as if it were coming closer, moving toward them. Liam looked around, his eyes darting nervously. His stomach churned with dread. Whatever it was real. And it wasn't leaving. Liam grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the door. "We're getting out of here. We need to call Mom and Dad. We'll figure this out together." But as he turned to leave, the door slammed shut on its own with a deafening bang. Liam's heart stopped. The sound of the door closing was sudden and violent, as if something had locked them in. "What is happening?" Liam whispered, his voice trembling. He knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a nightmare. This was real. Something dark and dangerous was in the house, and it wasn't going to stop until it got what it wanted. The wind howled outside the house, rattling the windows and causing the trees to sway with an eerie creak. Inside, the air felt thick with fear. Liam stood frozen, his hand still gripping the doorknob, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The door had slammed shut on its own, trapping him and Emily inside the room. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, but the silence that followed was worse. Emily's breathing was shallow, quick. She was still staring at the corner of the room, her wide eyes fixed on something that Liam couldn't see. He didn't know how to comfort her. He didn't know how to fix what was happening. The fear in her face made his chest tighten, and for a brief moment, he felt the same terror rising within him. "Emily, talk to me," Liam whispered, stepping closer to her. He needed her to snap out of it. He needed her to look at him, to acknowledge that she was okay. But she didn't respond. Liam tried to shake off the fear that was creeping up his spine. He had to stay strong for Emily. She needed him. She needed to know that everything would be fine, even if Liam himself wasn't so sure. The scratching sound that had haunted them earlier seemed to grow louder, more frantic. It was as if it was moving, creeping along the walls, trying to get closer to them. Suddenly, Emily's voice broke through the tension, her words barely audible, but chilling. "It's here. It's coming closer. It wants us." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He felt his throat tighten, and for a moment he could barely breathe. He needed to act. He couldn't let whatever was happening take his sister away. But how could he stop something he didn't understand? "Emily, we're going to be okay," Liam said, trying to sound calm, though his voice was wavering. "I'm here, all right. We're going to get through this. We need to stay together. It's just a bad dream, okay?" But even as he spoke the words, he didn't believe them. He could feel the coldness of the room seep into his bones. The air seemed to pulse with a strange energy, like something was watching them. Liam's eyes darted to the corner of the room where Emily had been staring. There was nothing there, nothing visible to the naked eye. But he could feel it. A presence. Something was in that corner, and it wasn't something they could fight. Liam turned to the door, pulling at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He tried again, harder this time, but it was as if the door was stuck in place, locked by some invisible force. Panic started to claw at him, and he could feel his control slipping. This wasn't normal. It wasn't a nightmare. It was real, and he needed to do something. "Now. Please, Liam," Emily whimpered, her voice breaking through his thoughts. "I don't want to stay here. I want to go home." Emily, we will," Liam promised, his voice thick with emotion. He pulled his sister close, wrapping his arms around her, trying to offer comfort, though his own heart was racing in his chest. "We'll get out. Just hold on." The scratching sound grew louder, echoing in the room, scraping against the walls like nails on a chalkboard. Liam's mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to protect Emily. But as the noise continued to grow louder, the room seemed to close in on them, the walls pressing in from all sides. Just when Liam thought he might lose his mind from the tension, the light above them flickered. It was only a momentary flicker, but it was enough to make him freeze. The room seemed to darken for a split second, and in that moment, he could have sworn he saw something moving in the corner. He turned his head sharply, but when he looked back, it was gone. Was he imagining things? "Emily, stay close," Liam whispered urgently. His voice was shaky, but he had to keep her calm. "We need to think. We can't let this, whatever this is, win." Suddenly, the scratching sound stopped. The silence was suffocating, like the calm before a storm. Liam's stomach twisted with unease. He looked around the room, half expecting something to leap out of the shadows, but there was nothing. The stillness was more unnerving than the noise had been. "Did you hear that?" Emily's voice was small, her grip on Liam tightening. It stopped. Liam nodded slowly, but his mind was racing. "Yeah, I hear it too." And then, without warning, the light flickered again, this time much more violently. The whole room seemed to pulse with the flickering, as if the very walls were alive. Liam's heart skipped a beat, and his mind screamed at him to get out. But how? The door wouldn't open. The air felt heavier by the second, and the cold was almost unbearable. Emily gasped, her voice cracking with fear. "It's here, Liam. It's right behind us." Liam's head whipped around, his eyes desperately searching for something, anything that would explain what was happening. But when his gaze landed on the corner of the room again, he froze. There was something there, something shadowy, something he couldn't make out completely, but it was real. It was there. Before Liam could react, the temperature in the room plummeted. His breath misted in the air, and a cold, clammy sensation ran down his spine. The dark shape in the corner seemed to move, slowly at first, then more quickly, as though it were crawling toward them. Liam's heart thundered in his chest, his mind screaming at him to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Emily was clinging to him, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. The figure was getting closer, and Liam could feel his entire body stiffen with dread. It was as if the room itself was closing in on them, suffocating them with fear. "Please, God, help us," Liam whispered, his voice cracking. He felt completely helpless, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. The figure was right there now, just inches away, its presence cold and suffocating. And then, with a sudden, terrifying screech, the lights went out. The darkness in the room felt suffocating. Liam couldn't see a thing. His eyes strained in the pitch black, but it was useless. The only thing he could hear was Emily's ragged breathing, and his own, which was shallow and rapid. His mind was racing. How could this be happening? They were trapped. The shadows had swallowed the light, and the temperature had dropped even further. It felt like they were in some other world, one where only fear and danger existed. Liam held Emily tighter, trying to steady himself, trying to remember that he needed to protect her. She was all he had left. They had to make it out of this. They had to find a way. But the weight of the darkness pressing in on them made his thoughts foggy, his hopes slipping away. "Liam, I'm scared." Emily's voice was barely a whisper, barely audible over the sound of her own breathing. "I don't want to be here anymore." Liam swallowed hard. His throat was dry, his words failing him. He didn't know how to comfort her, not when he was just as afraid. "I know, Em. I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." But as the words left his mouth, he wasn't sure he believed them himself. The scratching noises had stopped, but the silence that followed was even worse. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something terrible. Suddenly, the air seemed to thicken. A chill crawled down Liam's spine, and he could feel the temperature continuing to drop. His teeth began to chatter, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming sense of dread. It was as if something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. He could feel it in his bones. "Liam." Emily's voice broke through the silence again, quieter this time, almost as if she were afraid to speak. "I can hear it. The scratching. It's back." Liam's heart skipped a beat. He listened closely, but all he could hear was the sound of his own breath and Emily's. His hands were trembling, but he had to stay calm. He had to. He couldn't let her see how terrified he really was. "It's okay, Em. There's nothing here," Liam said, though his voice betrayed his fear. He wasn't sure if he was trying to convince her or himself. The longer they stayed in the dark, the more he felt like he was losing control. His mind kept racing, trying to find a way out of the nightmare they were trapped in. Then, out of nowhere, a loud crash echoed through the room, so loud that Liam jumped, his heart leaping into his throat. It was as if something had been thrown across the room, something heavy, something that had shattered. "Liam, what was that?" Emily screamed, her grip on him tightening. Liam stood frozen, fear locking him in place. "I don't know. Em, stay close to me." The crash had come from the corner of the room, the same place where Emily had been staring earlier. The same place where the darkness had seemed to move. Without thinking, Liam grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her with him toward the door. He could feel her shaking beside him, her fear radiating through her. The door was still locked, still impossible to open. He pulled harder on the knob, his muscles straining, but it was no use. The darkness seemed to close in on them further, suffocating them, trapping them. The temperature was unbearable now. His breath came in sharp bursts, visible in the cold air. It was as though the room itself had turned into ice. And then, through the suffocating silence, there was a whisper, a voice. But it wasn't Emily's voice. It was deep and menacing, like it was coming from somewhere inside the walls. "I'm here." The voice was low, almost a growl, and it made Liam's blood run cold. It sounded like it was right beside them, but when Liam looked around, there was nothing. No one. Just the oppressive darkness. "Liam." Emily's voice trembled, and Liam could hear the panic rising in her chest. She was clutching his arm now, not letting go. "What is that? Who's here?" "I don't know," Liam whispered, trying to hold it together. But we have to get out. We have to stay calm. He tried to think. Was there a way out? Was there a way to escape whatever was haunting them? They had to find it. Emily was counting on him. He had to protect her. Suddenly, the darkness shifted. It was like the air itself had warped, and Liam's heart pounded faster. He could feel something cold, something wet, brushing against his skin. He flinched, pulling away. But the feeling didn't stop. It was all around him. Cold, wet fingers. He felt them on his back, on his neck, creeping along his skin. "Get away from me," Liam shouted, spinning around, his eyes wide with panic. But there was nothing there, nothing at all. The room seemed to pulse with a low hum, like a heartbeat, slow and steady. The presence in the room was growing stronger, closing in, suffocating them both. Liam's mind was spinning. There was no escape. They were trapped, caught in the grasp of something they didn't understand, something that was too powerful for them to fight. And then Emily screamed. Liam whipped around to face her. She was pointing at the corner, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Liam, look. It's coming." Liam's heart froze. The shadows in the corner were moving again, swirling in a way that made no sense. It was as if the very fabric of reality was bending, warping. The darkness was taking shape. He couldn't see it clearly, but he knew it was real. It was here, and they weren't going to escape. "Liam, please," Emily cried, clutching at him, shaking with fear. Liam reached for her, but just as he did, the shadows lunged. Liam's heart hammered in his chest as the shadow lunged toward them. It wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was a shape, something solid, something real. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Emily clung to his side, trembling uncontrollably as she stared wide-eyed at the dark figure that seemed to grow larger with every passing second. "Please, don't let it take us," she whispered, her voice barely a breath above a panic-stricken sob. Liam wanted to tell her everything would be okay. He wanted to reassure her that they were going to make it out of this, but he couldn't find the words. His throat felt tight, and the words just wouldn't come. All he could do was hold on to her and pray. Pray that they would survive whatever this was. The figure in the corner shifted again, but it wasn't moving like anything Liam had ever seen. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, twisting and coiling, bending the very air around it. The coldness was unbearable now, so much so that Liam's breath formed thick clouds in the air, and his skin felt numb. Every inch of him screamed to get out, to run, but there was nowhere to go. "What is it?" Emily choked out. "What is that thing?" Liam swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "I don't know him, but we need to get out of here. Stay close to me." He moved quickly, but as he turned to face the door, he realized with growing horror that it was no longer there. The door, the one that had been the only way out, had vanished. The walls themselves seemed to be closing in, the room shrinking, trapping them further. I don't understand," Liam whispered, his voice breaking as he stared at the spot where the door should have been. Emily's breath came faster, her face pale, and her hands were clutching Liam's arm so tightly that her nails dug into his skin. She was terrified, and Liam didn't know how to calm her down. He was terrified too. "Where did the door go?" Emily's voice was shaking with fear. "What's happening to us, Liam?" The room had become a maze. The walls were shifting, bending in ways that defied all logic. It wasn't just the air that felt wrong. Everything about this place was wrong. The shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching toward them as if they had a life of their own. The whisper returned, but this time it wasn't just a whisper. It was a voice, deep and guttural, almost unrecognizable. "I told you, you can't escape." Liam's blood ran cold as he froze. He couldn't see where the voice was coming from, but it felt like it was coming from everywhere, echoing off the walls, seeping into his mind. It was as if the very room itself was alive, aware of them. "Who's there?" Liam demanded, his voice shaky but defiant. He had to be strong for Emily. He had to protect her. "What do you want?" The voice responded in a low, mocking tone. "You think you can fight what you don't understand. This place, this thing, it's beyond you. Beyond all of you." The words sent a shiver down Liam's spine. He tried to move, but his legs felt like lead. Emily was still holding on to him, her eyes wide with terror, but she was silent now. She knew better than to speak, to provoke whatever this was. But Liam couldn't keep quiet. Not now. He couldn't just stand there and let this thing win. "We need to get out," Liam whispered to Emily, his voice trembling. "I'll find a way." Emily nodded, though her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. The fear was infectious. It was like it had seeped into the very air around them, tightening its grip on their hearts, making it harder and harder to think clearly. And then, in that moment, everything changed. The room grew colder, so cold that Liam could see his breath puffing out in front of him. The darkness shifted again, but this time, it was different. The air itself seemed to crackle with energy. It felt electric, like a storm was brewing, but the storm wasn't outside. It was inside the room, inside the very walls themselves. Suddenly, the shadows leaked toward them, faster than Liam could react. His heart raced, and in that moment, he thought he saw something in the darkness. Something terrible, something alive, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Liam!" Emily screamed, pulling at him, dragging him away from the shadows. But it was too late. The shadow engulfed them, swallowing them whole. It wasn't just darkness now. It was something else, something more. It felt like hands, cold and hard, pulling them into a black abyss. Emily's scream echoed in the air, her voice blending with the darkness as they were pulled deeper and deeper into the void. Liam couldn't see anything. He couldn't breathe. Everything was suffocating, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely powerless. There was no escape, no way to fight back. He tried to scream, but no sound came from his mouth. He reached for Emily, but the darkness had separated them, pulling them apart, tearing them away from each other. And then, just as quickly as it had all begun, everything stopped. The pulling stopped. The darkness stopped. Liam opened his eyes, gasping for air, his chest heaving. He was lying on the cold floor, his hands shaking as he tried to push himself up. The room was silent now. The shadows were gone. "Emily?" He called out, his voice hoarse. "Emily, where are you?" But there was no answer, only silence. Dead silence. Liam's heart dropped into his stomach as he realized Emily was gone. Liam's body ached as he dragged himself to his feet. The coldness of the room still clung to his skin, and the silence weighed heavily on him. He could feel the sweat sticking to his back, his breath shallow and rapid. His mind was racing, 1,000 thoughts crashing into each other. He had to find Emily. She was out there somewhere. He could feel it, like a pull deep in his chest, a gut instinct telling him that she wasn't gone for good. Emily. Liam's voice echoed through the empty room, but there was no answer. No sound, no movement. For a moment, he stood frozen, listening for any sign of her, but the silence was suffocating. The air around him felt thick, almost as if the darkness was alive, pressing in on him from all sides. The walls were closing in again, he could feel it. His eyes darted around the room, trying to find anything that might give him a clue. But there was nothing, just emptiness. He reached for his phone, hoping to call 911, but when he looked down, the screen was cracked, flickering with static. It was useless. His last hope had just vanished. "Think, Liam, think," he muttered under his breath. There had to be something he could do, some way to get out of here and find Emily. He couldn't lose her. Not like this. Not after everything. He stumbled toward the corner of the room, scanning the shadows, his hands shaking as he fumbled for anything that could help. But everything was wrong. Nothing was where it should be. The room kept shifting, twisting in ways that defied logic, and the walls seemed to be breathing. The floor beneath his feet felt uneven, like he was walking on the edge of a cliff, and any moment he might fall into the abyss below. Liam took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He knew he couldn't keep panicking. He had to stay focused. He had to find Emily. But then the whisper came again, creeping into his mind. Low, sinister. Leave. Leave her. It's too late. Liam froze, his heart skipping a beat. The voice was everywhere, inside his head, inside his bones. It was the same voice he had heard before. It was the voice of the darkness, and it was mocking him. No, Liam shouted, shaking his head. No, I'm not leaving her. I'm going to find her. I won't give up on her. The air around him seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching even further, like they were reaching out to pull him into their embrace. He could hear the whispers growing louder, more insistent. It's too late. She's gone. But Liam couldn't give in. Not now. He had to keep moving, keep searching. He wouldn't let Emily's voice be swallowed by the darkness. She was out there. He could feel it. Emily. Liam cried, his voice cracking with desperation. Please, where are you? I need you to be okay. And then suddenly, as if in response to his cries, the room seemed to shift again. The shadows retreated, pulling back into the corners of the room. The air grew warmer, and Liam felt a flicker of hope in his chest. Maybe he was getting closer. Maybe Emily was still alive. With renewed determination, Liam pushed forward. He moved quickly, stumbling through the room, his heart pounding in his chest. His eyes darted everywhere, searching for any sign of her. But all he saw were shadows, darkness, the same empty walls. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A flicker of movement, a faint glimmer of light. Liam's heart leaped. He rushed toward it, his hands reaching out as if to grab hold of whatever he had just seen. As he approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a small door hidden in the shadows. It had appeared out of nowhere, just like everything else in this nightmare. Emily. Liam called again, his voice shaking with both hope and fear. Is that you? There was no answer. But the door was open now, just slightly, enough to see a sliver of light beyond it. A light that promised escape. A light that might lead him to Emily. He stepped forward cautiously, his hand gripping the doorknob. But as soon as his fingers brushed against it, a cold wave of dread washed over him. The voice returned, louder this time, filled with malice. Don't go through that door, Liam. You won't like what you find. Liam's stomach twisted. He knew the voice was trying to stop him. He knew it was trying to keep him trapped here, in this place of terror and darkness. But he couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything he had already been through. He pushed the door open. The light on the other side was blinding, almost blinding enough to make him shield his eyes. But he didn't hesitate. He stepped through, crossing the threshold into the unknown. The room he found himself in was unlike anything he had seen before. It was vast, stretching far beyond what the walls of the house should have allowed. The light here was brighter, but it had an eerie quality to it, as if it wasn't quite real. And then he saw her. Emily was standing in the center of the room, her eyes wide with fear, her body shaking. She was alive. She was okay. But the terror on her face told him that something was very wrong. Emily. Liam ran toward her, his voice full of relief. Thank God. You're okay. But Emily didn't speak. She just stared at him, her eyes locked on his with an expression of pure horror. And then behind her, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Liam froze. It was the same figure that had been in the room with them before. The darkness, the thing that had tormented them both. But now it was something more. It was solid, real, and its eyes glowed a sickly red. Liam's blood ran cold as the figure moved closer, and Emily's voice broke through the silence. Liam, you shouldn't have come. Liam's heart raced as the dark figure stepped closer to Emily. His body froze in shock. The air around him grew colder with every step the creature took, as if the room itself was shrinking. He wanted to shout, to run, but his legs felt like they were made of stone, unable to move. "Emily." Liam cried again, his voice shaking, but the words felt weak in the face of the sinister presence that loomed before them. Emily's expression shifted, her fear giving way to something else, something darker. Her eyes, wide and filled with terror, began to water. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she looked back at the figure, then at Liam, as if caught between two worlds. Liam took a step forward, finally breaking free from the paralyzing fear that had held him in place. "Emily, what is this? What is that thing?" Emily slowly turned her head towards him. Her lips trembled as she tried to find the right words. "Liam," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's not what you think. You shouldn't have come here." The figure, standing motionless behind her, had a presence that made the very air heavy. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Liam, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. The room pulsed with an unnatural energy. The walls seemed to stretch and bend in impossible ways. Liam could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on him. "What do you mean?" Liam asked, his voice barely more than a rasp. "I came here for you, Emily. I won't leave you behind." Emily took a shaky breath. "You don't understand. The nightmare isn't just in the house, Liam. It's in me too. It has been for years." Liam's mind raced. "What do you mean it's in you? What are you saying?" Emily took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she wiped the tears from her face. "I've been running from this thing for as long as I can remember. But it's not just a creature, Liam. It's a curse that follows me wherever I go." Liam felt a chill go down his spine. A curse. His mind raced to connect the dots, to make sense of the madness they had both endured. He had been so focused on the dark figure, on finding Emily, that he hadn't considered the possibility of something deeper, something more terrifying than just a creature. "Why didn't you tell me?" Liam's voice cracked as he stepped closer to Emily. "Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you?" "It wouldn't have helped," Emily interrupted softly, her voice full of sadness. "The curse always finds a way to drag anyone who gets too close into its darkness. You weren't supposed to come here, Liam. It was the only way to keep you safe." The dark figure took another step forward, and this time, Liam could feel the cold seeping into his bones. It was as if the creature had always been a part of the room, waiting, watching. The figure reached out, its long, shadowy fingers brushing against Emily's shoulder. Her eyes filled with pure fear, but it was almost like she had given up, like she had accepted that this was the way things had to be. Liam's heart ached for her. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't lose her. "I'm not leaving you," Liam said, his voice filled with determination. "If this is a curse, then we'll break it. Together." The figure's eyes glowed brighter, its voice suddenly filling the room, thick with malice. "You cannot break what has already been written in darkness. This is the end." Liam's breath hitched. Was this it? Was this really the end of their story? Was he too late to save his sister? Emily took a step back, shaking her head. "Liam, please, don't. It will take you too. You don't understand. It's too late." But Liam wasn't listening. He could feel the pull of something inside him. He didn't care about the curse, or the creature, or the warnings. He couldn't leave without Emily. He would do whatever it took to save her. "No," Liam shouted, his voice filled with power. "I'm not leaving without you. You are my sister. I will fight for you." Emily's eyes widened, and for the first time, the dark figure paused. It seemed to recoil, as if Liam's words had some effect. Liam didn't know what had just happened, but something in him had shifted. The figure's power didn't feel as strong anymore, as if the curse had weakened in the face of his resolve. "Get away from her," Liam demanded, stepping in front of Emily, his chest puffing out with newfound strength. He didn't know where the strength was coming from. Perhaps it was the desperation, perhaps the love for his sister. But in that moment, he felt like he could take on the darkness itself. The dark figure hesitated, then a low growl reverberated through the air. The red eyes flickered, like the figure was contemplating its next move. It took one step back, then another, as if unsure of how to react to Liam's defiance. "You cannot fight fate," the creature hissed, its voice like 1,000 whispers. "I am the end. I am your doom." But Liam wasn't backing down. Not anymore. His eyes locked onto the figure, filled with a fierce determination. "You may be darkness, but we are light. And light will always find a way to break through." The figure hissed again, a terrible, chilling sound, before it retreated back into the shadows. The room seemed to grow warmer, the oppressive weight lifting. For the first time, the darkness seemed to recede, shrinking away from them. Liam turned to Emily, his breath ragged. "Are you okay? We're going to get out of here. Together." Emily stared at him, her eyes wide in disbelief. You did it. You actually did it." Liam smiled weakly, but it was a smile of triumph. "We did it." As the light slowly returned to the room, Liam took Emily's hand. The nightmare was far from over, but for the first time, he truly believed they could make it through. The room was silent now, the air no longer heavy with the crushing weight of the creature's presence. The eerie sounds that had plagued their every step had faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the house, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Liam stood tall, his heart racing, his mind still trying to process everything that had just happened. Emily was next to him, her hands trembling as she reached out to clutch his arm. She didn't say anything, but her eyes spoke volumes: fear, disbelief, and something else too, something like hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, the darkness was gone. But that didn't mean it was over. Not by a long shot. Liam turned toward the door, as if to leave, but something held him back. The fear that had gripped him earlier was still there, though it was quieter now. He had faced the worst of it, but the feeling that something was lurking, waiting to strike again, refused to leave. "Liam." Emily's voice was soft, almost a whisper, as if she was afraid to break the fragile peace that had descended. "I told you this would happen. I tried to protect you, but you didn't listen." "Why didn't you listen?" Liam's eyes softened as he looked at her. "I couldn't let you go through this alone. I didn't care about the danger, Emily. You're my sister, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Emily looked at him, her face full of gratitude and sorrow. "I didn't want this for you," she said, shaking her head. "I thought if I just kept running, I could protect you from this curse, but I couldn't, and now I've dragged you into it." Liam reached out and gently pulled her into a hug. "It's not your fault. We'll get through this together. We've already defeated it once. We can do it again, if it comes back." But as the words left his mouth, a cold shiver ran down his spine. The atmosphere in the room had changed. The silence wasn't comforting anymore. It felt wrong. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he knew, deep down, that something wasn't right. "Liam, look," Emily whispered, pointing to the corner of the room. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He turned slowly, dreading what he might see. The darkness that had once filled the room, the shadow that had clung to the corners of their lives, was back. But this time, it wasn't alone. It had taken form, shifting, swirling in the corner of the room like a living nightmare, its red eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. The figure stepped out of the shadows, its long, clawed hands reaching toward them, its form flickering and distorting like a mirage. It was bigger now, more terrifying than ever before. The creature seemed to have grown stronger from the encounter, its power renewed. Liam felt the ground beneath him tremble as the creature loomed closer, its gaze fixed on them with a hunger that sent a chill through his bones. He had hoped, prayed that it was gone for good, but now he realized it had only been waiting for the right moment to strike. "No," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "It's too strong this time. I can feel it. It's not the same." Liam's heart sank. He had thought they were free. He had believed that with the creature's retreat, they had finally broken the curse. But the truth was far darker than he had imagined. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Liam turned to face her, his face grim. "We fight. We don't give up." With a deep breath, Liam stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. The creature hissed, a low guttural sound that reverberated in the very walls of the room. It was close now, too close. But Liam didn't falter. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. He didn't know how, but he felt something shift inside him. A surge of energy, of determination. He wasn't going to let this creature take his sister. He wouldn't let it drag her back into the darkness. "Emily, get ready," Liam said, his voice steady. "Whatever happens, don't let it touch you. Stay behind me." Emily nodded, fear in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Something like trust. She stepped back, her gaze never leaving her brother, as he faced the creature that had tormented them for so long. The creature's eyes flared, and in a flash, it lunged toward them, its claws slashing through the air. Liam barely had time to react. The creature was too fast, too powerful. But Liam didn't hesitate. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's grasp, and then he was up on his feet again. In that moment, something strange happened. Liam's mind seemed to clear, and he understood. He knew what he had to do. The creature wasn't just a force of darkness. It was tied to Emily's fear, to the curse that had followed her all these years. The more she feared it, the stronger it grew. Liam turned to Emily, his voice urgent. "Emily, you have to face it. You have to stop running." "What?" Emily gasped, but her voice trembled with doubt. "I can't. It will take me." "No," Liam said, his voice firm. "It feeds on your fear. You need to stand tall. You need to face it and let it know it has no power over you. You're stronger than it. You always have been." Emily hesitated, her eyes filled with terror, but she nodded slowly, understanding what her brother was asking her to do. She took a deep breath and stood up straight, facing the creature with more courage than she had ever thought possible. The creature hissed, furious at Emily's defiance, but Liam could see it faltering. The shadows around it began to shrink, its power weakening as Emily's courage grew. With a fierce cry, Liam stepped forward, joining his sister. Together, they faced the creature. And for the first time, they weren't running. They were standing side by side, confronting the darkness. The creature screeched, its form writhing as it tried to hold onto its power. But it was too late. The curse was breaking. Emily's strength, combined with Liam's unyielding love, was too much for the creature to bear. With a final, piercing shriek, the creature vanished, its form dissipating into the air like smoke. The room grew quiet again, the darkness finally gone. For good. Liam turned to Emily, his breath coming in short gasps. "We did it." Emily, shaking but smiling, nodded. Together. And for the first time in years, the weight of the curse was lifted. The nightmare was finally over.